Welcome, everyone. My name is Soni Martin, and I'm a professor of art at Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I have a guest artist, Marcela Casals, who's been invited to be a part of our fine arts series in March, very soon. So first, I'd like to introduce our artist, Marcela. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're so happy to have you come to Fayetteville State for many reasons.
I'm very excited about this project. I really am.
And well, I'm excited to talk to you about it, especially during this phase, this sort of still the process, the conceptual part. And before we get started, I just want to contextualize this conversation that we're going to have. First of all, I'm thinking of our students, our art students at Fayetteville State who have never experienced performance art, a visual artist that does performance art, as well as what you're going to do, as well as an immersive sculpture installation. So I want to talk about this in terms of the process, some influences, this conceptualization that's still taking place. As well as I'm thinking it could be, significant if someone decides to look at this interview before they come to Rosenthal Gallery. So that's really where I want to stay with this. And then we're going to do like a part 2 follow-up during the masterclass that you're going to give our students on March 18th. So let me begin by saying I have always known Ms. Casals as an artist because when I first met her, she was and still is a professional actor. And to my surprise, she decided to get a degree in visual art. And then she came to Fayetteville State University, and myself and the other faculty were able to work with her. And she earned a Bachelor of Arts. Her focus was on sculpture. And then she left Fayetteville State. And then Marcela will talk about your 2 next degrees.
Well, I was fortunate to be offered a scholarship at MICA, Maryland Institute College of Arts, for a post-baccalaureate program. And so I did that, and it was fabulous. I would not have done as well in grad school had I not had that post-baccalaureate year. And then after that, I was accepted at School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, which was wonderful for me because my sons live here in New York City. So
now the degree in the post-baccalaureate, that was a 1-year degree.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting to me that you chose to do that. And just in real, just sort of sum it up, why, how it was so impactful for you that moved you to then earning an MFA.
Well, the truth is that I thought I was prepared for an MFA, and I applied, and I got on several waiting lists. But, and MICA was one of them, but then they offered me this, and I thought, that's interesting. And I really liked the school. And so I thought, I'm going to do it. And not because I knew how helpful it was going to be. And it really prepared me. We had so many eyes on the work. I had to make up time because I'm not a visual artist who started, even though as a kid I drew and my mother painted and all of that. I was not someone who was a visual artist, someone who in high school was drawing and painting. I wasn't that person. In high school, I was performing. Right. So I had a lot of time to catch up because even though the students were a lot younger than me, they were really a lot older than me. They had far more years under their belt with visual arts than I did, far more experienced. Well, and And so I thought, so this really helped me. It helped me to become more focused about what it was. And it helped me develop my trajectory. Like,
Right.
how was it that this system was going to express itself through visual arts?
Right.
And then I couldn't do the year entirely. I had to take a semester off because of my mother's health. And so when I went to Buenos Aires, I was fortunate enough to do a fabulous residency at a place called Proyecto ACE, ACE. And that also kind of focused me. And those two things really prepared me for grad school. And then I was accepted at SVA, and so I went.
Well, I think those, are good points, especially for those that are thinking about obtaining a degree or students in a degree, that focus of your knowing sort of that next step and a focus about where your work is, where it's going, which I think you did have that. When you left here, you did have that. It was, and it's interesting because I think you've actually, and we'll talk about that, come back to a lot of things that even in the earliest phases, that first undergraduate program that you connected to. But now when you were here, you didn't want to do performance art, which is fine. You were focusing on all the studios that were all new to you. I know.
I was really against.
Right. And that's fine. I mean, you were so excited about, sculpture.
Yes.
Sculpture. So, but then you still do sculpture, but you also now do performance art. So share how that occurred.
Well, I guess I sort of drifted into installation. And I didn't know it then, but that, as I began to focus on large work that was an installation, that began to turn me toward performance art, even though I wasn't aware of that at the time. I was just into the large scale installation. But then when I came to New York for my master's degree, I was fortunate enough, I thought, oh, I'm here, I can take Buto classes. And Buto started in Japan in the late 1959 is the date given. It is by Tasumi Hichitaka and Kazuo Ono. And they were sort of rebelling against their own traditional Japanese theater and dance, but they didn't want to go into what had been born in the United States, which is modern dance. And so they were trying to find their own way of using the body to express. It's influenced by German expressionism, and of course by their own culture. We're all influenced by the culture in which we come from, and it is a dance, even though it's traditionally not choreographed. Buto is very personal. It's not necessarily pretty. It's slow, even though there might be some sudden movement. And it's not preconceived. There might be a concept, an initial concept, but it's not preconceived, and it's just very, very physical. And I just really relate to that. I like that space, and it's a headspace. Buto is a headspace. I find it very meditative. And so I was working on my thesis that dealt with the concept of the fold, the concept of action within inaction and action within action, and these dualities. And my one of my professors at the time, Sheila Pepe, who was just brilliant. I was so so fortunate to work with her, said to me, why don't you combine these things? Why are you not combining these things? And I went, oh. And so Buto became a conscious doorway, whereas installation was
Right.
turning me in that direction, but I wasn't aware of that. Buto was a very conscious doorway that I walked through. And I'm sure you remember the installation that I did before I left Fayetteville at the Arts Council.
Yeah, it was moving.
And I don't know if you recall I know people wanted to stay in it. And then the Arts Council told me about this fella, this homeless fella who just grabbed a chair and sat there for the longest time all by himself one afternoon. And so in a way that's performative, isn't it? You know,
Right,
this
it is.
idea of expressing in a space.
Right.
And so that's how it all started to come together.
When you have been preparing for several months, the immersive sculpture installation, as well as the performance piece, is titled In-Between. And I want to go back to your undergraduate, just think about those elements or principles that has influenced, stayed with you, that you connected to, and that is integral to the sculpture as well as the performance piece.
Well, the thing that is most, to me anyway, the thing that is most, not important, but the obvious thing that comes up and what I consider when I'm working on a piece the most is line. Where's that line going? Where's that line moving? And as I perform, I consider myself the performer, not the human having an emotion or wanting to say something, but a living line, a moving line. You know, I'm only 5 feet tall, so I'm not too much of a line. I'm also not 100 pounds, but anyway, that's sort of the concept of it, you know, that moving line within the thing. So things tend to be mostly vertical, although when I was working with paper and doing wall installations that were quite large, and it was difficult to see the line there. Things were horizontal or ruffled up or whatever, but there's always that sense of line moving through space, even though it may be static.
Right.
In the installation. So that's what I think about. And then once I get a hook on it, I suppose writers have the same thing, you know, once you write the first sentence or something, the work itself begins to guide you. Anne Hamilton, who is my favorite visual artist, she speaks of how the work will speak to you, and she works extremely slow. It'll take her years before she knows where the work is going, and then it just happens. So it's a matter of listening also.
Right. But I think this is like rare for us to be talking to you as you are in the process, and then you will arrive here and then continue more of the process with the installation. So I know that you are working with, just talk about then some of the materials that you're working with that's influencing this, that you've chosen, as well as I understand there's going to be sound and words, and just touch upon those three things briefly.
The concept arose from the idea that that I live in between two languages, two sets of organized sound. One is my mother tongue, Spanish, which is no longer my language, even though I still speak it. And the other one is my foreign tongue, which is no longer foreign to me.
Mhm.
And so that space of belonging and not belonging in both places, which is an experience that all immigrants feel. And often there's that switch of language. Sometimes there isn't, but often there is. And everyone's experience is very different. You know, there are people. The reason for why people immigrate affects how they feel about their immigration, how they experience it, the age at which they immigrate. I came to the United States when I was 9 years old from Buenos Aires. That also influences the immigrant experience. And so once I began to think about that and began to write words in both languages, I began to notice that they blended, that they could be read in Spanish, that they could be read across together, or they could be read in English. And so I created I carved the words into plaster, and from there I created rubbings, the way that you would do for gravestone. I created graphite rubbings, and that's a whole video because it was 2020 performance. And so for this one, for this extension of it, because in 2020 it was because we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't have an audience, it was very limited. So I did as much as I could do given the parameters of that particular time. So now this has given me an opportunity to expand the experience, to embody the experience. And hopefully those who come to walk through the installation and observe the performance will have their own sense of in between. And of course the sound, the words will be spoken. It'll be part of the environment.
So, you know, with so many different mediums, and now we have new media, which I personally consider as, if I could make a generalization, as non-material, where you're certainly connected to material. But what do you, with all those different mediums and technology, new medium, why do you think performance art is still relevant to the audience that attends it, and as well to the artist?
Well, it's alive, you know, it's alive. And so the performance artist and the performer and the viewer are exchanging an energy. You can't help it. You have energy fields that are intertwining. You know, you're present together in that moment in your own way, but you're present together in that moment. Whereas with video, and I've seen some really good video art that's just mind-blowing. With video, the observer is always the observer. The observer is not energetically part of the event. And the performer is part of the event at the moment that it happened, but is no longer present in a live fashion in the video. Now, we tend to connect more when there is plot, like in a movie. We tend to connect more. or where even if it's abstract, the video leads us into a kind of inner plot that we can identify with, or or it triggers our own plot. So then it becomes a little bit more, the audience is a little bit more connected, but there's still no energy exchange with the performer.
So a painting, the artist, a sculptor, new media, the artist, is finished. They've completed what they needed to complete. They put it out to the public, and then the public, their experience is their experience. You have no control over that.
Mhm.
As the artist, taking in your past experiences with your performances, you have this conceptually in your mind, what you're going to do, how it's going to go. Has that changed? Does it change during the performance for you as the artist?
Well,
Because you're really still in process.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the thing that works for any performer, whether they're on a stage singing, or it's completely what I call abstract theater, performance art, completely abstract. The performer has to inhabit and commit to that moment. Absolutely. And so it is in that focus, in that commitment, that's real space. That's real. That's actually happening. And when you don't have something that is scripted, even though there are parameters, you're not suddenly going to do something else. Every moment is new. You cannot repeat the moment. It's not like, when you're watching YouTube and you go back 10 seconds and then you see it again, and you go back 10 seconds and you see that again. It's going to be that real moment again, even though it may have a lot of similarities. It's, I like to work with repetition, but I don't think there is such a thing as repetition unless it's mechanical.
Mhm. So, and this is going to be my last question.
Okay.
So you are creating an immersive sculpture installation that when you leave, and before we end this conversation, we'll go over those dates again, but when you leave, the sculpture is going to be still up and until April 8th. And so people can come to enjoy and immerse themselves in that sculpture because it's the whole gallery. Have you done this before, where after the performance that the sculpture still exists, or is this the first time doing this?
Well, it still exists. When I did my thesis, it still existed.
Mhm.
And I documented it.
Okay.
And people came through my studio, and
Right.
there it was.
So I guess what I'm asking is,
and there was a video,
Right.
of something that was not part of the performance, but a video performance.
But you don't always think of it that as it's hand in hand. You don't have to do an installation. A performance can be separate from a
Yes.
sculpture installation. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
I did the fold. There's a video of just my hands folding.
Right.
And that's all there is of that. But I did do that live in a gallery where there were other performance artists. And so that went on for a while, and there it was, but then it was over. There wasn't anything left behind.
Well, I'm excited about certainly the performance piece, but also the sculpture, the immersive sculpture, because I think the ones I've experienced, they're very exciting. And I'm just excited for our students to be able to experience that.
Wow.
So we're going to see you soon.
Yeah.
You're going to arrive soon. And then you got a lot of work to do.
I do.
And on the 18th, this is the end of February, soon, next month,
Yeah.
then our students will have a master class, and you'll do, the sculpture will have been installed, and you'll, whatever you need to do, and then they'll witness or experience rather, the performance art. And that's on March 18th. Then on March 19th, that is when Rosenthal Gallery on our campus at Fayetteville State University, it's open to the public, where you will do a durational performance work.
Yes. 5 hours.
12 to 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And then at 5:30, we're going to go downtown in Fayetteville. Ellington White Contemporary Gallery is hosting your reception. So I hope people will come to the performance art, and then they can go on down there and meet you, and we'll celebrate. And then as you go back to New York, until April 8th, visitors can come to campus, and they will be able to be in the sculpture itself. There will be a video playing, there'll be sound effects. And so that'll be a really nice experience too.
Yeah, the video will be the video of my performance.
Right.
That we will
Well,
prior.
I'm excited, and I look forward to working with you, whatever you need me to help you with, and for our students to experience this, and anyone that comes on campus. So I'm closing this, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I look forward to it.